Almost everyone believes morality is simply about knowing right from wrong. But here's the problem. Physics has no equation for kindness, justice, or compassion. If the universe is just particles and energy, where do our moral values come from? Today we'll examine whether ethics is simply an evolutionary survival strategy, or whether it points towards something much deeper. Later we'll see why this question may tell us as much more about consciousness as it does morality. Physics, Consciousness and Reality, Dickie Dredd and Nigel Adams. And we are on part 37 of the video series. And we've moved now from chapter 4 to chapter 5, Ethics, Free Will and Human Life. So this chapter shifts from physics and perception to the terrain of human life, asking how we can make sense of ethics, free will and responsibility if reality itself may be illusory or emergent. Begins by framing ethics through an objective lens. If the universe is just matter and energy in motion, morality seems like a human invention, a set of rules that help groups survive. Evolutionary theory supports this, showing how cooperation, fairness and reciprocity emerge as strategies that give individuals and tribes an edge. Yet the felt weight of morality, the conviction that kindness and justice matter beyond convenience, remains a puzzle. This tension opens the chapter. From here the discussion moves to free will. Neuroscience and philosophy collide. Experiments suggest many of our choices are initiated before we are consciously aware of them, while physics presents a mix of determinism and randomness. The possibility that free will is an illusion challenges our most basic intuitions about autonomy. The next sections explore justice and responsibility. If free will is questionable, can legal and ethical systems still hold people accountable? Pragmatic arguments suggest they can. Responsibility may be less about metaphysical freedom than about shaping behaviour, protecting society and fostering cooperation. Motivation follows as a linked theme. Are our drives and sense of purpose just survival tools, evolutionary hacks that keep us moving forward, or do they point to deeper truths about meaning? The chapter acknowledges both possibilities, noting how lived experience often insists that our choices and responsibilities are real, even if theory undermines them. The final part of the chapter looks at suffering from a Western perspective, contrasting with Eastern approaches later in the book. It situates suffering within psychology, ethics and social systems, rather than cycles of rebirth. Chapter closes with a warning. Scientific language is often misused by mystics and self-help gurus who co-opt terms like quantum or energy to sell spurious cures. The line between rigorous insight and pseudoscience must be defended if discussions of ethics, free will and consciousness are to remain clear. So today we're on section 34, Ethics from an Objective Lens, Evolutionary Morality and Conscious Values. So far, we've been talking about physics, evolution, perception and consciousness. But lurking in the background is another huge question. Ethics. How do you build a system of morals if you're looking at the world from a purely objective lens? If space-time, matter and even the self are illusions or emergent patterns, what's left to ground right or wrong? From the classic scientific point of view, ethics is tricky. If the universe is just particles colliding in space-time, then everything, love, cruelty, justice, reduces to interactions of matter and energy, which are the same things really. If in that picture there's no cosmic rulebook, no higher authority handing down commandments, morality looks like a human invention, a set of rules we make up to keep the tribe from falling apart. Evolutionary theory gives a sharper take. Cooperation, fairness and empathy turn out to be strategies for survival. Game theory shows us that tit-for-tat reciprocity wins over pure selfishness in the long run. Care for your kin, cooperate with allies, punish cheaters, and your genes are more likely to keep flowing forward. In this view, morality isn't about truth or goodness in some absolute sense. It's about what works. It's a survival strategy, a set of icons no different from our perception of trees and moons. Useful, but not fundamental. But here's a changer. Here's a clanger, not a changer. Most of us feel that ethics is more than survival. We don't just avoid murder because it's evolutionary convenient. We feel it's wrong. That sense of moral weight, of meaning, of duty, where does that come from if reality is only physics and survival filters? That's the same riddle as consciousness itself. The qualia of morality, the lived experience of right and wrong, doesn't reduce neatly to neurons or equations. From a strictly objective standpoint, you could say ethics is just an emergent property of social brains, patterns that happen to stabilise groups, nothing more. But subjectivity, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like there's something real about compassion, love, fairness, as if they're not just strategies, but glimpses of deeper order. Here's the sting. Even if we agree ethics is just a survival hack, that doesn't make the lived sense of morality vanish. We still feel outrage at injustice, compassion for suffering, admiration for selfishness. If those feelings are just evolutionary smoke and mirrors, why do they feel so binding? Why does our gut tell you it's wrong to kick the dog, even when no one's watching? That tension between cold explanation and lived conviction mirrors the hard problem of consciousness itself. And maybe that's the clue. If consciousness really is fundamental, not emergent, then perhaps ethics isn't built on survival at all. Maybe it's baked into the same ground from which awareness springs. Seen this way, morality isn't an illusion to be explained away, but a signal, pointing us back to the unity beneath the surface. That doesn't mean commandments written in stone, but something subtler, a recognition that the boundaries between self and other are thinner than we think. This is where some physicists and philosophers make the leap. If consciousness is fundamental, maybe values aren't arbitrary after all. Maybe compassion, love and justice aren't just evolved traits, but expressions of deeper unity that consciousness reveals. In other words, morality could be a human translation of an underlying truth, that separation is illusory, and harming another is harming yourself. Eastern philosophers describe that as the supramundane definition of karma, where the mundane version basically says it's nice to be nice, then nice things will happen. Or, in some religious contexts, involves some kind of storage of good deeds that somehow shape your future in a positive manner. Of course, an objective system can't appeal to what was discussed in the previous paragraph. It can only describe what works: reciprocity, fairness, cooperation. Useful but lifeless or cold. The subjective world, the world of lived experience, insists that there's more at stake. Ethics sits at the crossroads. From one angle, a pragmatic evolutionary hack. From another, a clue to the deeper reality that physics hasn't yet grasped. Either way, the question won't go away, because even in a world of illusions, we still have to live with each other. So where does that leave us? Perhaps morality is nothing more than evolution's most successful survival strategy. Or perhaps our deepest moral instincts are pointing towards a level of reality that physics has yet to explain. If this is true, understanding consciousness may also mean rethinking where values themselves come from. So in the next video, we're still on chapter 5, Ethics, Free Will and Human Life, and we will cover section 35, which is Free Will, Science and Philosophy at Odds.